The next thing that I want to show you is the single easiest way to gain thousands of MMR in the carry position by just not doing one single thing. Hello friends, Diet Soda Connoisseur here, bringing you another Dota 2 video in which we're going to be talking about why this guy, Miracle, is so goddamn good at Anti Mage. It seems like there is very little that you can do to stop him from farming. Even in games where Nigma loses, he is insanely farmed on Anti Mage. So how does he do it? One of the big reasons I need to say before I get into it that I wanted to make this video is because people suck at Anti Mage. There are a lot of people out there that have a 44 or something like that percentage win rate with Anti Mage, and then they have some carries that they're really good at, like Juggernaut and Sven, 55% win rate. So they're farming wins with these more generic heroes, and then with Anti Mage, which is kind of more of a niche hero, they're losing. They're underperforming. It's going horribly. And I think that's a problem that can fairly easily be solved. I think that the amount of mistakes that you can make on Anti Mage, there's less of them. And what I mean by that is the mistakes that you make, they are amplified. Certainly, that's the core weakness to this hero. Is you can die one or two times and maybe it's okay, but a third time you could lose the game. However, the situations in which you can die are not as complicated as other carries. There are only a few of them, and that's what I want to show you in this replay, because Miracle is an absolute beast at optimizing on Anti Mage to almost never die in those common situations. Here we have the first situation that I wanted to show you in this replay, where Miracle is farming at the creep wave. His team is engaging in a 2v3 on the side, and you can see that he did, if I go back here, he did have his camera such that it's panned half on the creeps over to the left, and then it's panned half on the heroes that are fighting to the right. So he's paying attention to both things that are happening, but he is paying more attention to the creeps. He's just trying to get the last hits, and he has his body over near the creeps. A lot of pub anti-mage players, they think that it's their job to run over and fight with their team, whereas really it's your job to just sit there and farm, and if the enemy team gets low enough and if they put themselves out of position, or if they're really threatening your support and maybe they're going to kill your support, or you think that you can get a kill, then possibly you can head over and fight. In fact, later on in this replay, that is indeed what Miracle does, but it looked like FP were essentially just posturing. They weren't really posing any threat to Nigma, so he didn't feel like he had to head over to do anything. He just continued farming. The next thing that I want to do is take a quick kind of slow-mo look at Miracle's camera positioning just for a couple of seconds here in the laning phase. Look how he has his camera positioned. He has the creeps on the camera, so we can see every single creep's HP. So he's not going to miss any last hits or denies for having his camera like this. However, he has his camera down such that he sees a large portion of this kind of jungle area and near where the side shop used to be, where the outpost is. So if there's anything that's happening over here, or if somebody runs into vision to try to kill him or to try to get a deny, he's going to see it with his actual camera as opposed to just seeing it on the mini map, which your brain is very likely to not register as quickly as actually seeing it in the middle of your screen. So there's very little wasted camera space. He could have his camera up like this, centered on his hero, and look how much camera space is wasted up at the top here, whereas he has his camera down here like this so that he can see basically double the area that a lot of other people would not see because they would have their camera focused on their hero. Here's another common scenario where a lot of other carry players would probably end up dying, where Miracle has his blink ability on cooldown for 6 seconds, so instead of walking up and trying to get last hits, he doesn't do anything. He just stands in experience range. Kuroki, being a good support, stands out of experience range, but he doesn't walk in and try to get any last hits because he knows that without the blink, there's a huge amount of kill threat on him, and at the very least, he's going to probably take a lot of damage if he tries to walk up. You can see that when he does have the blink ability up, he can just blink away when the Enchantress throws the impetus at him. So if he walked up and tried to get last hits when he didn't have the blink, then he's probably going to take a lot of damage. A lot of other carry players, they would just go for the last hits because they think that that's their job, but you have to be very realistic with your resources in the lane. If you don't have an ability that is required in order to walk up and get last hits against a tri-lane, then you just can't go. You can't do it, and that's okay. So what do? You can pull, you can stand there and get XP, you can go and jungle the easy camp if you really want. There's plenty of options. But basically the worst thing is to walk up and die because you think that it's your job to get the last hits. Here's another pretty similar situation to the last one that we saw where Miracle didn't have his blink ability up. Instead, in this situation, he does have his blink up, but the creep wave is directly in front of FP's tower. So this is a very dangerous location for him to be farming. And you can see that if I pause here and I scroll down, that there's a creep that's about to get denied from Miracle. But he doesn't even go for it. He knows that it's very unrealistic to think that he can walk up here, potentially against 2 supports and an enchantress, and get last hits. He's going to have to waste his blink. He's potentially going to die. It is not worth it. So what does he do? Instead of doing what the typical carry player would probably do and farm creeps, he pulls. He plays the support role because if nobody else is going to do it, because they're busy in this game, he needs to do it. And this pulls the lane back. He sees that the enemy team, they run over to mess with the Nigma support, so he pulls to the hard camp just to be a little bit greedier. And either way, if he didn't get that last hit, which he did, which is great because he's Miracle, he would still have the lane equilibrium right in front of his tower. Once Miracle picks up his Ring of Health, he has this realization, and a lot of players have this realization when they're playing against an Enchantress, that there's not much of a point in him going back to the lane and just getting dumpstered because this hero that he's laning against is having these power spikes because of having levels and the impetus. And then also there are supports that can potentially roam and kill him. Yada yada. Basically the lane is dangerous. He's the carry. Whatever he wants to do is what his team should facilitate. Remember that if you're a carry player. It is absolutely not your job to go to the safe lane and continue dying. You have supports that can do that. In fact, you have supports that would love to do that. Look at Kuroki. He is getting a solo lane as a position 5. This is a support player's wet dream, man. This is great. It's a 2 birds, 1 stone situation. This guy doesn't have to go to the lane and get his ass beat, and this guy doesn't have to be level 3 at 10 minutes. He's going to be 5. This is the best day ever for Kuroki. So basically, he leaves the lane. He doesn't try to go back to a losing lane at about 8 to 9 minutes into the game, and he heads into the jungle and farms some stacks. At about 10 minutes in, there's some stuff happening top. It looks like Nigma's fighting heroes would like to take a fight, so instead of running away and jungling somewhere else and then TPing in, Miracle says, okay, you know what? I'm going to just farm towards the mid lane. I'm going to start with this camp. I'm going to probably move to the easy camp, and then I'm going to farm towards the mid lane. Maybe if a fight happens here, I can contribute to it, but I'm not necessarily going to look to get involved with anything unless something presents itself. And it does. But instead of blinking in like a madman, because he's Anti Mage at 10 minutes in, so he's completely worthless, he just hits the Razor. He saves his blink ability, and that allows him to kind of test the waters with this fight, and then he sees that it's bad because Eternal Envy's not going to die. He doesn't even try to get the Mana Void off. There's potential that he could have Mana Voided the Razor, who's got very low mana, and kill him and have some clutch play happen, but it's just such a huge risk. And like I said, with Anti Mage, I think the way that you need to think about the game is that you have between 1 to 3, maybe 4 or 5 deaths if it's a really good Anti Mage game, where if you die that much, you're probably going to lose the game. So is it really worth wasting one of those deaths in order to kill a Razor at 10 minutes into the game for like 200 gold? Probably not, right? So the moment it looks bad, he doesn't blink in, he blinks the hell out. He uses his spell shield and he just gets out. And the only time that he looks to take fights is essentially when it's like this, when there's a really strong hero on his team there and the enemy team is not looking so strong. At about 13 minutes, the laning stage is essentially completely broken down. He looks bot, he sees that there's a ton of heroes there. So instead of continuing jungling, he tries to farm while also contributing to the game, which involves hitting lane creeps. He's pushing the lane in so that somebody has to respond to this. And this, in my opinion, is the single most important thing that differentiates Miracle from other Anti-Mage players. He forces people around the map, and then he looks to fight. He's got 2 criteria in which he'll fight. The first criteria is if he sees somebody, if he pushes somewhere and forces somebody to a location, he will immediately look to fight somewhere else. That is the only situation where he'll look to fight, other than if the enemy team is diving like crazy. And we can see in this scenario, he forced the treant to TP top. He clicked the tree, saw that he had no TP scroll, So he's farming away from the lane. He played very safely. The moment Tree showed up, he left, but he's looking bottom. He looked mid as well. He's looking for things to get involved in. As an anti-mage, I know that sounds crazy, but remember the two criteria. If the enemy team is forced to TP somewhere else, then you know you have an advantage elsewhere on the map if you use your TP. So in this situation, this might look a little bit dangerous. This like, okay, he's fighting on anti-mage. I do that in my pubs. Why doesn't it work for me? It's different. The reason that this is actually a safe play, despite looking kind of crazy, is because Omni Knight is mid. His player perspective is bot because he's looking bot, wishing that he was there. And then Treant Protector was forced top. So if this fight in the bot lane goes well, it is not due to anybody but Miracle. Miracle was the one that forced the rotation to make this fight good. And that's why it's safe, because the rotation was forced. So all he needs to do is go down here, bait a little bit, run and use the trees for cover, wait for his team to get there, and they showed up. That's the reason that he didn't just go in like a crazy person. And they kill everybody. Very simple. You just need to follow those exact criteria that Miracle has. A, is the enemy team diving like crazy? Okay, then you can look to possibly TP and fight. Or B, is the enemy team forced to rotate somewhere because of me, and then I can go somewhere else and fight at an advantage. Other than that, and I will show you situations where he does this, do not fight on Anti Mage. Never. Do not look to aggressively engage until you hit that power spike where you know that you're stronger. Then you can look to aggressively engage. Next, we have a fight that is very similar to the last one that we saw, except this one only fits the first criteria, which is the enemy team diving like crazy, and they are. Miracle is split pushing in the farthest lane away from the enemy team as possible, typical anti-mage stuff, and then he TPs in only when the enemy team completely overcommits behind the tier 1, when this fight looks really, really good. And the reason that he's doing this is just so he can snag a couple of kills, get a little bit of extra gold, make sure that his team doesn't feel like they're totally 4v5ing, showing the enemy team that if they do anything crazy, he's not just going to be a useless hero. He will show up and he will fight, so you have to be careful. And I think that's an important factor to have in the game. And then he immediately goes back to farming. He's not looking to do anything aggressive, just defensive, or potentially aggressive, but only if the second criteria is met, and that's if the enemy team was forced to teleport somewhere else in response to his split pushing. Next, I would like to show you a fight which does not fit the two criteria that Miracle has for showing up the fights. And I know I've been hammering this in for a while, but the reason that I am hammering it in is because I genuinely think this is one of the most important things involved with being good at Anti-Mage. It's knowing when to show up to a fight and when to not show up to a fight. Because like I said, the mistakes are amplified, but there are less of them that you can make. So look bot, this doesn't really look good for the Radiant or Dire. This is kind of just some random fight near the outpost for the outpost bounties. Miracle does have a TP. He's a little bit low, but it doesn't fit the criteria. There are no dives happening here. This is not some crazy action where the Radiant is like diving a tier 2. There's no active shrine there. There's nothing that makes this like crazy by any means for the Radiant. As well as there's no situation where Miracle has forced the Radiant to teleport anywhere. So neither of the criteria are met, and Miracle does look, because he's looking to see if this fight becomes crazy. That's what his job is. He's just like, okay, are the Radiant doing anything nuts? And if they are, he'll maybe TP. Keeps looking, clicks on Brile, sees that he's completely full mana. His Wind Ranger is getting destroyed in the trees, but it's no big deal because he's an anti-mage, and we see anti-mages do this all the time, where they just ignore fights. But the important factor of being a good anti-mage is ignoring the right fights. The next thing that I want to show you is the single easiest way to gain thousands of MMR in the carry position by just not doing one single thing. And that thing is using your TP scroll to get somewhere after you respawn. Watch Miracle. He dies because the Radiant made a really sick play on him, and he just blinks his way to a lane. He doesn't TP there to get there a little bit faster. And you know why? Because if he uses his TP, the game is possibly over. If the Radiant are good players, and of course they are, this is tier 1 Dota, maybe tier 1.5 Dota, they're going to take a fight. And if he used a TP, then he cannot get to that fight. And we've seen already over and over again in this replay. There's even clips that I haven't been showing you because I don't want to show you every single one of them. There's too many. Miracle is showing up to fights on this hero. At the very least, he's giving himself the option to show up to fights. And if you use a TP scroll, that is 80 seconds where you don't have the option to show up to a fight. That is 80 seconds where the opposing team can fight your team without arguably the strongest hero showing up after the fact, and the most important hero showing up after the fact. So that could be GG. This is where so many carry players lose Dota. They play well. Their mechanical skills are good. They're smart. They're strategically good at the game. Other than this, they're just greedy. Greed just takes over, and it loses people so many goddamn games. And I'm sad to see it. It happens so much to the best of us, and it doesn't have to. Just don't use your TP scroll. And the reason that Miracle used his TP in this situation was because he walked bot, which forced the enemy team to walk towards him because, oh god, guys, we need to stop this farming Anti Mage. So then he can TP top, and then in the time it takes them to get top, his TP is up again. So you can just keep doing that over and over and over again. And the only thing that can stop that farming pattern from happening and that free farm from happening is if you use your TP scroll as soon as you respawn. The one last thing that I would like to show you is the point at which Miracle ends this game on Anti Mage. And I think if you're an Anti Mage player, this is really important to think about because the whole goal of the game is to avoid the enemy team and only take favorable fights up until the point where you have some set of items where you feel confident that you're able to just 5v5 the enemy team and win. And with the new neutral items, it's actually pretty easy to know what that timing is because a lot of the time at 25 minutes, you'll get a neutral item drop that's really good or two, and then you'll pick up a big item as well. So in this game, Miracle gets an Orb of Destruction. He has his Manta style, and if we look at the Radiant draft, the only disables are Storm Spirit Pull, which he can use Counterspell for, and the Tramp Protector Ultimate, which he can Manta off. So with the Manta, he feels like he's unkillable. And then he picks up the Basher, so that gives him the aggressive potential. He's also got the slow and armor reduction coming from Orb of Destruction. So these are two big item pickups, as well as having his defensive item. And this is when he takes the very first aggressive fight of the game. Look at how he blinked in here. Like a maniac. He just blinks right in. Nigma blasts everything on the Omni Knight. And this is, it's go time. Look at this. He's a madman. Essentially, after they have that item pickup where he gets the Skull Basher, he gets the Manta style, and he picks up the Orb of Destruction, he actually replaces it with the Paladin Sword. He gets his Abyssal Blade, so this is an even stronger timing. But since then, since those item pickups, Nigma essentially just looks to take any fight. They're just super aggressive. They take any fight. Some of them went a little poorly because they have a gold deficit, and there were some misplays, and Mind Control's kind of having a rough game, so he's used to having a lot more net worth to play with. And then this happens. They take another random fight, and it just happens to go really well because the later and later the game goes with this Anti-Mage hero, the stronger you're going to be, as long as you're fighting after you have these item timings. They do this really cool thing where they wait for the Storm Spirits Aegis to despawn while keeping him alive, which is insanely awesome and the main reason that I wanted to watch this game. And they end the game off of that. The game is over. They call GG on the side of FP on the Radiant side soon after this. That's it for this video. If you want to help your boy out with the YouTube algorithm, you could subscribe to me. It's been like, I think a year before I posted these last few videos, so the YouTube algorithm's not very fond of me right now. So if you could subscribe and like the video, that would be insanely cool, and I appreciate it. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.